Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Hope you had a good weekend. We've got some good content to get to you all week long. Yes, tonight is the next episode of The Bachelor. It'll be episode 2, and we'll have a pre-show live stream that'll be right 1 hour before tonight's episode. So if it's on at 8 p.m. East Coast, that means 6 p.m. Central and 4 p.m. Pacific. I will be doing a 1 hour pre-show live stream and probably directly thereafter tonight's episode. So go check that out. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and you'll get alerts for that. And also follow me on Instagram at DNeals. Lots of stand-up shows coming up. I'm in Tennessee, in Nashville this Thursday at a very fun show. If anyone is in Nashville this Thursday, and then I'll be in Clarksville, all these random Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, whatever, Ohio, Kentucky. We'll be all over. Okay, I'll tell you who's all over. Bryan and Rachel. I didn't mean it like that. That sounded mean. We're going to get into it and share what exactly is going down. Bryan either gives Rachel the dogs or lets the audience know he's not taking them. Whether that was his decision or not, we'll have to see. All right, join me on Patreon at noon Central Time or thereabouts, and we will discuss all the behind-the-scenes makings of The Bachelor, what's going on. There's a lot of little stories starting to bleed out. It's turning into be a pretty wild start to a new year. So you can go to Patreon if you want to get some of that information, and every morning and afternoon, Bachelor Rush Hour, the hit podcast. All right, so here it is. I got the wrong graphic up. That's okay. It's a Monday. Nobody's perfect on a Monday. Even your power recapper, Dave Neal, not exactly perfect. Here it is. Okay, so Bryan posted this 3 days ago. Look up dogs in your nearby shelter. They'll change your life. Adopt, don't shop. Stepping out of the house for a walk, fresh air, food, and some belly rubs. The good life. And then someone commented, so he got the dogs? And here's Bryan's response. No, copper was hers. I don't know which one's copper. I'm guessing this one on the top looks more copper-like than that one. I could be wrong. We got Brownie as a couple, but I would never separate them. Kids should never be used as a leverage in a divorce, even fur babies. Just enjoying the time left before I've got to leave. Gonna miss their company. One day I'll go to a shelter to get one of my own. And now people are commenting. Listen, there's going to be people that are pro-Rachel. There's going to be pro-Bryan. But I have to tell you, regardless of the relationship, to give your dogs up when you are a dog lover, we can only assume he is, it's got to be very tough. And like, I met Bryan. Didn't necessarily, I've never really met Rachel in person. I'm sure she's lovely. But Bryan here, I mean, I don't know if he says it's time to leave like he's packing up from their home or he's moving out of LA. I'm not really sure. But I have to tell you, for a lot of people that maybe don't share their emotion deeply or publicly, and we don't get too much emotion out of Bryan, it's got to be, and again, I know he filed for divorce, but it's got to be incredibly challenging to say goodbye to those little things that provide you so much love unconditionally when a lot of other things in this world don't. Even relationships, as much as we want them to be unconditional love, conditions do always come into the mix. With dogs, not so much. They just want their belly rubbed. They want to know you're going to come home and feed them and love them, and that's why they are amazing and better than cats. By the way, I'm looking at a lot of furniture for my new home, and there's all these chairs that, like, if you want to buy an affordable furniture used, it's probably got damage from cats. I don't know what it is about cat nails, but you can't have a cat and also have nice furniture. Now, with that said, my dog, he's able to destroy his furniture in his own ways. Okay, either way. So it goes on. And, someone said, you don't need to explain yourself. And it's got to be very tough. It's got to be very tough. And again, I'm not here to have a pro-Bryan account where we provide pity for what he's going through. He's the one who filed for the divorce. But that doesn't mean that he's the bad guy. It just means he was the one who first decided this was no longer working, at least legally speaking, right? So anyway, she responds with an Instagram story. OMG, this is so precious. Thank you, Olivia, for taking such good care of my boys while I'm gone and keeping them happy. Now, she could have just been shouting at a friend who was watching the dogs, or as some people, and again, everyone likes a good mystery, as some people have thought, well, Rachel clearly is not in an amicable place in her divorce with Bryan, and it's like, well, newsflash, most people aren't, and therefore she didn't want to make it seem like he was doing this charity work watching the dogs, when, of course, that's not what Bryan did, but they're both allowed to share about the dogs. But unlike Caitlin Bristow and Jason Tartick, who have decided to split duty, which, by the way, I'm not going to pretend like one's better than the other. I know a lot of people in the comment sections will have hot takes. No, you have to do it this way. You have to do it that way. In the end, like, they're lovable dogs and they're going to be just fine. You know what I mean? Oh, you're uprooting their home. It's like, listen, okay, Fluffy's not out there fighting for squirrels to survive. You know what I mean? He's in a lovely home regardless. Like, they're doing just fine. They're going to be okay. Either way, there were some responses from people, again, not going to overdo what the who's in the right or who's in the wrong. Again, it's a tough situation. I am excited to hear what Rachel has to say because, does she have reasons why she believes Bryan shouldn't have, whatever? We don't know. But as far as Bryan's concerned, he has a pretty solid track record of being uncontroversial, not really saying anything or, lowering himself into the dramatic side of Bachelor Nation. He's kind of just been a humble guy kind of pursuing his dreams. That's what I see. You guys, whatever. So there doesn't have to be a winner or a loser here. But what's interesting is, and I've had this episode for like literally a week now. I've had this episode and haven't known what to do with it. Deandra, 2 weeks ago, released this episode. Deandra Canoe's got a podcast. Pretty good looking podcast. They've got a nice frame there, nice tree. The background's a little hot, maybe some diffusers, and it's a little echoey, but it looks fantastic. I love the chairs. So she's got a podcast here with Rachel that was clearly filmed before the breakup. But I wanted to share with you guys some thoughts that Rachel was having about her relationship and sort of maybe their overall personality types that may have led to it not working out. Have a listen.
What I've done. So I thought people know me through entertainment, through pop culture. So let me pivot by putting myself in a position where I can show I know what I'm talking about and I can have my own personality and opinion and a presence in the pop culture space because I do have a little bit more respect for that. That's how I moved into entertainment because those opportunities were more available to me. And I thought, and then I can, weave in sports or law or politics, whatever it may be in with that. So I think that sometimes take the no as a reset. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can pivot into something else. Or maybe you just shift a little bit. That's just how business is in general.
Now, she's talking about business, but business and personal life do kind of, a lot of the rules can apply for both. So where she's talking about pivot and shifting when you get a no. Also, that works for relationships. She got a no from Bryan, but it might be the best no she's ever received. There might be a better yes around the corner.
I hear that. I think for a lot of young listeners, whenever I listen to podcasts and I hear people say, one no doesn't mean that you should turn away. Like, you want to face 100 no's. That's a good thing. You should face 100 no's because it's the 101th person that you ask that says yes. But to me, it's frustrating because I'm like, I want you to get granular. How did you face that? How were you working a full-time job and then also chasing your dreams? Mm-hmm. What did that look like for you financially? Were you sleeping on a friend's couch? Did you have to sacrifice certain things? And if you don't mind me asking, I really want to understand, and I want the listeners to understand
Good question.
The technicalities of it. So you were practicing as an attorney full-time. Did you quit your job? Were you still practicing? Did you live off of the savings? You obviously said you dipped into your personal budget to fly places. Can you explain the situation where you were in your life, how you were able to do that?
Yeah. When people tell me that I'm you took a risk, you left legal and you went to entertainment. I'm not as much of a risk taker as people think. That's why I kept practicing law. I wanted to still get a full paycheck and then be able to do what I wanted to in my free time. And so, yes, I wasn't sacrificing financially, but I guess I was by dipping into my own personal budget to fly myself out and put myself up. But I had that and I had a foundation and I felt solid. And I knew I could always come back to it. So I wasn't going in 100%. But what I did sacrifice was my well-being, a little bit of my health, because I had no time, even my relationship, because I was with Bryan at that time. I had no time for anything. Every minute was a hustle for me.
Now, some are wondering, how do you know this was filmed or recorded before before the breakup? And my thought is it was recorded before because she then talks about a movie she can't promote because it was during the SAG strike, which I think ended in mid-November. So before the relationship, but she did mention I was with Bryan at the time, was that past tense, but she talks about the relationship as a way where at the time thought that maybe things are still going okay. But as she mentioned, sacrifices, like, look, nobody knows sacrifices more than God, to use my own example, stand-up comedy. I mean, you have to choose many times between family and the pursuit, and there's only so many hours in the day. So that's just how it works. A lot of times people in Bachelor Nation will criticize alumni when they get off the show and their priorities aren't met. I mean, look at Katie Thurston and Blake Moynes, right? He was going to Africa I don't remember where he was going, but he was on a trip to do a conservation trip for the rhinos or something like that, right? Well, she needed a husband or a fiance at the time who could help her with all the turmoil of overcoming, the criticisms of being the lead and the pressures and all of that. And he was probably in a place where he wasn't aware that that was a role he needed to play at the time. So by all means, you can go on a long trip on your own or do this eat, pray, love bullshit or whatever you need to do. But relationships are also like a fire that need to be continuously nurtured. And every relationship needs to learn how much nurturing it needs versus how much time. Maybe Bryan needed more of someone who was with him on the day-to-day than Rachel could give because she was still chasing these dreams. If Rachel quit her dreams for Bryan, then she would probably be bitter and resentful because she didn't pursue her dreams. So it's almost like you can't ask someone how they can operate for you and for what you need. You just need to find somebody who fits that puzzle better.
And it was sitting in my hairdresser's chair, because they can be like therapists sometimes. And I told her, I was like, I am burnt out. I am dying. And she said, and I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere, to be honest as well. I was doing stuff, but nothing was hitting on what I really wanted to do as a media personality. So she said, what is it that you're doing that's holding you back from what you really want to do? And I was like, my legal career. But I'm too afraid to let it go because it's defined me for such a long time. I was afraid of what my parents would think. I was afraid of what the public would think. I felt like I had a lot of respect because I was the smart bachelorette.
You're an academic.
Yeah. And so people were like, well, she went back to her career, and I was applauded for that. So I thought, if I leave this and I do something in Hollywood, what will people say about me? And so there was a lot of that I struggled within. And she said to me a saying that I've heard quite a bit, but at the time I had not heard it. She said, you can't pour out of an empty cup. And I was so empty, so deflated. And she said, you'll never know what can happen if you just let go of what's holding you back and just see if releasing that will allow you to fly.
Wow. Hey, great advice. We always say leap in the net will appear, right? You can't fully know your potential if you're holding on to the safe thing. And while she gives that sort of advice to Deandra, maybe now she's taking it herself when it comes to her relationship. Maybe the thing with Bryan was the safe thing, but maybe that was holding her back. Maybe Bryan needed to serve her divorce papers for her to kind of reach her true potential. Not that he was doing it to favor her, but either way, interesting stuff. And by the way, shout out to Deandra for this giant Stanley Cup. I mean, what are you doing with that? Are you doing ice plunges? Is that what's going on? Wow, that is just a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got this thing over here, this little blue collar sort of timer here for all the water I'm drinking. But that Stanley Cup deserves its own Stanley Cup. It needs like an attachment next to it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us in this video. We'll be back with more content right after this.